Okay, getting ready to do another battle report. Thought we'd just put the armies on display this time. Did some different list building for the Tau. That's a little 4-man unit of marker lights, 5 marker lights with a drone commander, and 4 more little marker lights. The stealth suits there, 2 units of fire warriors. They're actually allied in Tau, and so they don't have to pay the marker light or the bonding knife tax. There are 2 individual crisis suits here. This one is accurate, and 2 fusion guns and plasma. And this one is 2 fusion guns and plasma as well. Obviously he's new. Quad gun and a line here. The 3-man crisis suit list is now just all missiles. So there's twin-linked missiles, and then there's more missiles. And then the Riptide has also been upgraded to fusion. That's the whole list there. On the Eldar side, after a tournament this past weekend, I adjusted my list for 1,500. 2 Warwalkers with bright lances. I split the Hornets up since they're squadron units. Doesn't seem necessary to keep them in one unit since I have space in the FOC. Wraith Knight with the Sun Cannon and Scatter Shield. 2 Serpents with no upgrades other than the shuriken cannons and the scatter lasers, no stones of any sort, no holofields. 10 Guardians for this one, 10 Guardians for that one, and then 3 Shadow Weavers, 7 Spiders, 2 units of jet bikes with shuriken cannons, and then a Mantle Autarch. That rounds out the list. Oh, we'll be playing the BAO scenario number 2 this time. Alright, deployment is complete. Tau, very conservative deployment. It's kill points, so starting with not a lot on the board, maybe a strategy. 12 Fire Warriors with the Cadre Fireblade here, 5 Marker Lights with Drone Commander here, 12 more Fire Warriors and another Cadre Fireblade here, manning a quad gun. Stealth suits infiltrated up to here. The Autarch and the Wraith Knight are there. Top player kept a lot in reserve. 2 units of marker lights, both of the single crisis suits, the 3-man crisis suit, and the Riptide, all deep striking. On the Eldar side, we've got Shadow Weavers here with a Wave Serpent. The Mantle Autarch is here, conveniently out of line of sight from the quad gun there. Wraith Knight here, tow and terrain, and another Wave Serpent here. 2 units of jet bikes in reserve. The Hornets are each outflanking, and the Warwalkers are also outflanking. And the Spiders are deep striking. So lots of reserves on both sides. Alright, that's the end of the top of turn 1 for the Tau. The stealth suits popped out from where they'd infiltrated to here so they could shoot at the Wraith Knight. 1 wound came off. That was actually from Fire Warrior, not from them. They didn't do anything. Then their jetpack move took them back into this terrain here. Tau got super unlucky with the first turn objectives. They had to hold objective 3, which is way over there, and they had to have a scoring unit in my deployment zone. Really difficult, unless you're tailoring your list for high mobility. Turn 1 objectives just seem like, I don't know, they seem like they should be a little bit more reserved. Turn 5 is, one thing, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, whatever. But turn 1, making somebody get all the way over to the other deployment zone is pretty rough. Otherwise, that's it. Didn't fire anything, didn't move anything. Pretty quiet. Alright, that's the end of Eldar turn 1. Wave Serpent went flat out over here to be closer to objective 2, and also to get a good angle on these guys here. Shadow Weavers stayed where they were. Wraith Knight came up. I decided not to try to charge these guys to add firepower against the Fire Warriors. And then this one flat out to hold objective 3. The Mantle Autarch is right back there. So I get both of my first turn objectives, and the Tau player does not get any of them. It's pretty rough, so it's already in a hole. 2-0 on the secondary. Good shooting here from the Shadow Weaver. and the Sun Cannon Scatter Laser reduced this squad quite a bit, but they made their leadership check. That's the end of turn 1. That's the end of the top of turn 2. One of the lone fusion suits came in, actually dropped in almost behind the Wave Serpent, but not quite, in side armor. Both of the smaller marker drone units came in. They were used to mark up this Wave Serpent and the Wave Serpent over here. Riptide also dropped in, and that was it. Plenty of shooting all around. Did not fail saves on my Wraith Knight, which is unusual, since there are 3-ups. I did have a hull point stripped off here, and I did call a jank. I called the jank versus the quad gun, which didn't have marker light support, but versus the fusion suit I could not jank. But the Serpent Shield reduced it to a glance. Over here I'm down to 1 hull point, and I did have to call a jank versus, I think I called it versus missile pods from the drone commander. So that was it. So both Wave Serpents janked. This one has 1 hull point, the other one has 2 left, and I didn't fail any saves with the Wraith Knight. I spread out a little bit, tried to put marker lights in between my Wraith Knight and his Riptide, see if he could save him, and spread out his stealth suits. So that's the end of the top of turn 2. Alright, that's the end of game turn 2. Warwalkers outflanked came on here. One of them got wrecked by interceptor fire. One of the Hornets came on over here. He shot the Crisis suit and doubled him out. That denied my opponent the tactical objective of trying to score a point for having a unit in my deployment zone. Orc Spiders dropped in, put a couple of wounds, put 3 wounds on the Riptide. Riptide took another wound from something else I don't remember. I think it was the fusion gun. The Autarch decided to try to be brave, charge in and finish him off. But despite wounding him once, he made his save. And then the Riptide tried to smash, but the Autarch made us invulnerable. Over here, didn't shoot, and now that I know the rules for charging into cover, he easily made the charge on the stealth suits and killed all 5 of them. One of them had been lost to difficult terrain the prior turn. Otherwise, these 3 marker light drones here, I know they look like gun drones, they're falling back. That's pretty much it. I scored both of my objectives, which was to hold objective 2 and to have more units in no man's land than my opponent had. And I denied my opponent by having these in his backfield, in his deployment zone, and by taking out the Crisis suit that he had over there by objective 3. So the Eldar are winning the secondary 4-0, and I sincerely doubt there is any way that he will be able to catch up. Alright, that is the end of the top of turn 3. Missile suits dropped in. They dropped in about here by the bikes. Jetpack move took them there. They combined with marker light support to take out that Wave Serpent over there. Over here, this Wave Serpent was taken out by the quad gun and marker light support from the drone commander. These Guardians are not pinned. Let's see. These marker lights are still falling back and are almost off the board. Combination shooting from the drone commander's missile pod and the fire warriors on the left hand side wrecked the other warwalker. They decided to ignore this big guy. We'll see how that works out. And they also shot these fire warriors over here, shot the spiders, but the spiders made all of their saves. In close combat, the Autarch hit 3 times, failed to wound at all. The Riptide hit once and put a wound on, but he made us invulnerable and then hit and ran. So the Riptide regrouped back towards the line, and then Jetpack move took him to here. That's it. There's just no way that the Tau player is going to be able to get the secondary. The objectives for this turn are hold objective 3, which is that one way over there, and also to have more units in no man's land than the opponent does. That just isn't going to happen, neither one of them. So it's kill points from here on out. Alright, that's the end of game turn 3. It's going very poorly for the Tau. The missile suits which were there got easily taken care of by the Hornet that came in from reserve. The Shadow Weavers didn't do anything. Nothing over here either. And in fact, that Hornet didn't even fire on anything, didn't have any targets. In assault, the Mantle Autarch took out 3 marker drones. The Warp Spiders took out the Riptide, wounded him 7 times, he failed 1. He only had 1 wound left, so that was that. And then the Wraith Knight had enough room to jump behind the line and then charge from the back to put him in contact with the drone commander. Didn't shoot, obviously. So Hammer of Wrath hit and wounded. The drone commander made his save versus that, and then in the close combat, the Wraith Knight only hit twice and only wounded once. And then I forgot to issue a challenge. This is my Warlord, and so he's a character. And since I forgot, Lookout Sir put the AP2 wound on a drone, which got smashed into oblivion. Eldar scored both of their objectives for this turn. One objective was to have a unit in my opponent's deployment zone. Boom. And then the other one was to make sure that my backfield was clear of any enemy units, which I also got. So, secondary score is now 6-0. I did forget to mention that the Wraith Knight took 2 wounds from Overwatch during the assault. I thought it would be funny one time just to see how much firepower the Tau could put out. None of the marker lights hit. I think it could have been worse if they had, but still, they made 2 saves. Was wounded 4 or 5 times, made 2 or 3 saves, and so took 2 wounds. Okay, that's the end of the top of game turn 4. Tau once again saddled with horrible objectives. Hold objective 1, hold objective 3. There's just no chance in doing it. The Crisis Suit did drop in by objective 1, but then actually ended up putting firepower into the spiders to help try and finish them off, and then use the jetpack move to get back behind the line. In other news, obviously the spiders were whittled down to just 1, made his saves, made his morale check, and then made, I think, 3 or 4 saving throws too in close combat. So, stuck in there. I remembered to challenge. The drone commander declined, and then the Wraith Knight promptly whiffed a bunch of attacks, only managed to squish 2 drones. The commander made his morale check, so they're still stuck in combat, which they may... I think it'll be done after this. There's only 1 drone left in the drone commander. Otherwise, this is all that the Tau have left on the board, and the Eldar have been, other than the loss of some vehicles and walkers, largely unaffected. Alright, that's the end of game turn 4. We're calling it. This is all that's left right there. In the previous turn, I forgot that Warp Spiders have hit and run. They're so rarely in close combat. It didn't come to mind. Otherwise, those guys would have been shot to death. Anyway, but yeah, they managed to win, so yay for them. Over here, finally finished smashing the commander, and over here, charged, took a wound in close combat, not from Overwatch, and not from all the dangerous terrain on the way in either. Managed to kill 2 on a charge, so they lost by 1. And because they're allied in, and they're not actually Farsight Enclave troops, we didn't buy the bonding knife for them, so they didn't get to roll on their unmodified leadership. They ran, I caught, and cut them down. So there's not too much point going into turn 5 with those guys right there.